Excellent. Hi, welcome today. My name is Megan Flanagan, and I'm an affiliate coach at From Within Coaching, and I am here today with our fearless leader and founder, Amy Magyar. Hi, Amy. How are you today?
Hello, hello. Fearless.
Excellent.
Boy, that brings up the topic of the day is imposter syndrome. I love that you think I'm fearless, or at least play one on TV. Yes.
So yeah, today our topic is going to be imposter I can't even say it, but we all feel it, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So my question for you today is, what do you think the role imposter syndrome plays in deciding whether someone, whether they decide they want to be a coach?
Yeah. I bet as a coach of especially female entrepreneurs, that imposter syndrome comes up a lot for you in terms of watching them, right? And they may or may not even know what that term is.
Right.
I'm gonna define it, at least in my mind, of what I think it is, and then I'm curious how you define it. Just be neat to kind of get
Sure.
your thoughts on it. So imposter syndrome is, for me, my definition is thinking somehow that you have fooled everybody into believing you're something you're not. And often it comes up of sort of that, I love the sort of the visual of the duck on the water who's just beautifully, just so gracefully moving. And yet below the water, its little legs are like little, sort of blender legs, and is going a million miles an hour. And yet it just looks like it has everything together. And imposter syndrome, I think, is another way to sort of look at it is you are so sure you have everyone fooled about whatever it is. And so in that sense, it comes down to that core belief of you are not enough, but you have fooled people to believing you are more than you are. So that's at least how I sort of look at imposter syndrome. I'm curious in your dealings, sort of how, if you mentioned imposter syndrome to one of your clients and they said, Megan, what's that? How would you describe it?
Pretty much on tee with what you just said. It is like the fear of being found out.
Yeah.
And when you operate from that place, nothing good happens. I mean, imagine getting in a car and being like, oh, I don't have a license, the fear of being found out. And oh, by the way, I've done that, so I know exactly what that feels like. And it is, in its core, imposter syndrome. Yeah. Like, go drive a car without a license. Like, that's, you'll feel it as a kid. But as an adult, it is that, oh, darn it, they're going to find out that I shouldn't be here.
Right. And it often shows up when I was doing a lot of career coaching of executives. It would show up where an executive would get a leadership role and kind of get in that role and look around and be like, I fooled them into thinking I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think in reality, I like to say, especially after 2008, with a rather large economic downturn, there wasn't time for people to keep people who didn't actually know what they were doing. It was go time, and I think we're going to see that in 2020 as well. There really is no time for sort of the pretenders, and so they're going to get cleared out. But for the people that stay, your companies are keeping you because you do know enough, and you do know what you're doing, and you don't have them fooled. None of us are Oscar-winning actors or actresses in terms of being able to fool people that well into, thinking something, thinking we're something we're not. So the question about how does that show up when people are trying to decide whether they should become coaches or not? So it happened for me, absolutely, where I talked myself out of becoming a coach because I used the excuse of there wasn't enough time. I didn't have enough money to be able to afford the certification. And still in between all of that was I'm not going to be good enough. I'm not going to be good enough. And at the end of the day was this feeling of, I don't have my stuff together. So how the hell am I going to be able to help somebody else, right?
Exactly.
Oh, how can you help somebody through their problems when you have this container of mess that you have not yet sort of brought out to the world? And I think people are so sure that they have to be so perfect to be a coach.
Yep.
Who is going to listen to me if I don't have my stuff together, and they're going to figure me out, right? I don't know if that's something that you hear with some of your entrepreneurs, but maybe not so much when they're selling a product, a thing, right? A tangible thing. But when they're selling themselves as the product, holy
Sure.
smokes.
It's even more dialed up, I think.
Oh.
So
I think people will talk themselves out of, I don't have my stuff together enough to be able to help somebody else. And yet they've been told their whole life, you're so good at helping others, right? I remember when I first started my coaching certification, I remember actually crying to my mentor coach because I had this huge life-altering change. And I literally was a wreck. And it was such an interesting time because I knew what was going to make me feel better was diving in and helping others as I was going through my own awareness about my own personal mess that was happening. And my mentor coach said to me, I think I sobbed and said, how the F can I be a coach when I don't have my shit together? And she smiled and said, this is the perfect time to go to coaching school. Because one of the things that's going to happen in coaching school and as you're coaching is you're going to start creating awareness in yourself about what happened for you.
Right.
As you're coaching others, because in coaching school, you have these little mini coaching sessions with your peers and you practice. And she said, the great thing is you're bringing this big, juicy, ghastly, horrible thing that kind of you're struggling with and how to move forward from it. You're actually going to bring that into coaching school and be able to unpack it every time
Right.
you do a practicum. And I thought, yeah, but I literally have to figure out every day how to pick myself up off the floor. I mean, I had just literally, for lack of a better way of saying it, been left at the altar.
Right.
And I just kept thinking to myself, how can I show up with certainty when the only thing I'm certain about is that I'm a complete sham, or I was actually completely embarrassed at what had happened. And so how can I show up certain with these people and my clients when I have no certainty? And yet, the thing that helped me was I was certain, even though I couldn't figure out my own stuff, I was so certain that I could stay objective about what was happening for them. And that really kind of helped me. But I was so sure my life had to be perfect. Everything had to be exactly the way, everything was in its tidy box because that was the way I was going to be a better coach. And in fact, my mess was my story, as you say that all the time, right?
Yeah, your mess is your message.
Oh, it was my success too, in terms of being even more empathetic and being more aware of fear and feelings of stuck and things like that. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing that happens, Meg, around imposter syndrome in coaches is they will attend a coaching school to try to get rid of imposter syndrome. So it's like, if I learn everything that I could learn about coaching, I'm going to feel better about being a coach because it's going to remove the fact that I have people fooled into thinking I know what I'm doing. Now, coaching school, whether it's an International Coach Federation school or a coaching school like Martha Beck's, it's not an ICF school, still super great for those who feel like they want the education, feel like they want that commitment, they want the accountability, feel like they need that expansion. And that's a whole other topic we'll talk about how to even pick your school. But the school will not remove the imposter syndrome, because I truly believe that it's almost like a false sense of security. Oh, I've gone to school, so I must know what I'm doing. And then you get coaching and you get challenged by a client, or they stay stuck and you're not able to move them forward. And the imposter syndrome kicks in, and the mindset is, yeah, but I went to school, I know how to do this. And every client's different, right? So school gave you the foundation, but didn't solve everything that may happen in a coaching session. And for me, one of the cures for imposter syndrome is action. Just doing.
Say it again.
It's action that
Yes.
solves imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Right.
It is about doing it, and it may not be perfect, and it may not feel exactly the way you thought it was going to feel, or look the way you thought it was going to look, but it's enough. The thing is that as you're struggling as a coach in a coaching session with imposter syndrome, and oh my gosh, I'm not providing enough for this person, and they're not getting the most out of it. I always, at the end of every coaching session, ask my clients for a takeaway. What's your takeaway from our time today? It is mind-blowing, and probably the second best way to get rid of imposter syndrome, when that client shares something that maybe you thought you had gaffed, or maybe it was something that they had just blown over and they had said to you, yeah, like they heard it, but they didn't really embrace it. And then when you say what's the takeaway, and they say exactly that thing, it's like, oh, they were listening, or that did mean something. I did help them create awareness.
Right.
And so for me, for coaches that are having imposter syndrome in a session, it's really a great way to sort of, at the end of it, no matter what, there's going to be something they're going to walk away from for your time with. And how cool that can be for you to just kind of be like, hey, guess what? You did make a difference.
Right.
You know, it didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have, but it was enough.
So as somebody out there, there are tons of entrepreneurs that want to be coaches. I work with them all the time. And if they want to, like they're feeling that imposter syndrome, they may or may not even recognize that it is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like you said, the best thing to do is to take action. But so what is that action? Like, can somebody, reach out to you and your group and like talk about what it is to be a coach? Or so we want them to get them to take action. What is that action when you want to be a coach and you go to Google and you say, how do I become a coach? And you go down that rabbit hole, like, it's insane what happens. So give us an action.
Yeah. One of the first things I think that action is a cure for imposter syndrome. Part of the action is even just saying, I think I have imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to say it and not judge it, and say, of course I do. I've never done this before. Or, of course I do. This is challenging me. And so the beauty of, if you're considering becoming a coach, I will say this: the best advice I ever got about coaching was get a coach, because it's a person for you. It's your sounding board. It's your imposter syndrome sort of preventer, because just like your clients, you need that. You have blind spots. You have doubts. It's so great to be able to have that person to talk to say, Amy or whoever, I think I have imposter syndrome. I have a client who just started with me, and one of the things is around that imposter syndrome. She's like, it doesn't matter the marketing plan that you put out for me, if I don't believe I can, or I don't believe I'm enough, I'm never going to get to that marketing plan, because I'm never going to go find those clients to test out that thing. I'm going to keep thinking that they're going to figure me out. And so one of the things we do at From Within, and for me as a mentor coach, is my my drive so much is about helping people just talk about becoming a coach. What does coaching mean? What kind of coaching is there? Is their background sort of strong enough where they wouldn't need to go to school? Where might they, if they decide that they want to go to school and get certified, do they even need to get certified? But talking it out. And so, our dear friend Brene Brown would say to us, one of the things about imposter syndrome is that there's so much shame around it. And so by bringing that out and having a conversation with somebody who, and let me be fully clear, still fights imposter syndrome every day, right? I just don't let it lead me. But it's always in the driver's, it's sort of in the back seat saying to me, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, really? Is that, So FYI, I'm recovering in my imposter syndrome, but I don't let my imposter syndrome get in the way of being able to help somebody else with their imposter syndrome. So getting on a call with us, that we offer an exploratory session. As a mentor coach, I'm here to be your sounding board and spend a little time with me just to see what comes out. What comes out if you say to the world, I feel like I'm an imposter, even though everybody has told me I make a great, incredible coach. I'm so scared that I have everybody fooled. There's probably a few questions that I can ask you to help you see you're not fooling anybody. Yes, you really are that way. The other thing, Megan, I'd say is, we have From Within are huge fans of Clifton Strength Finders.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Clifton Strengths really helps people, no matter what their profession is, understand their drivers, their DNA, and the things that when they use them, they never fail because they come so easily and they're fluid. And those understanding your strengths, one's strengths, can really also help defend against imposter syndrome, because the brain is saying you're not enough and your strengths are saying actually you are. There's this tangible thing. If you do this just disappears. You're not fooling, because
it's like your spine. It's there supporting you. You can't say it's not there. Like, it's there. So I love that you brought up strengths, because that is such an action that, bowls over imposter syndrome. And I have leaned into my strengths every time when I feel like an imposter. And I don't know that it fully goes away for anybody. I just, maybe you just don't think about it. So, or until you put yourself in a growth position, you might go, oh, there it is. But so it's like, there's the Enneagram tests, there's Myers-Briggs, there's all these things that are help you with relationships and helps you with all these things. But I think when it comes to Strength Finders, it's one of the pillars. And like just now, I was like, it's your spine.
I love that. Oh, I love it. It is your spine, it is your core, and everything comes from that. Absolutely. And I think, I think it's so important to know that when you're starting with anything new, or you're, I often will say this, and I'll leave it at this. When people have asked me at times, like, what should I be when I grow up? When I was doing a lot of career coaching. And although career coaches, we never actually give advice. We help people figure out what they should be, but we never say, you should be this. If I did, for some reason, say to somebody, I think you should go to Starbucks and be a barista. And they would look at me and be like, I don't understand. Okay. All right. I know I said I liked coffee, but I don't. All right. Well, that sounds easy. They don't get scared, right? They're like, okay, I'm not really sure why you told me to do that. But there's nothing that comes up for them. It's almost like the reaction is like, okay, I guess I could. Versus, I think you should become a coach. And they're like, oh my God. They immediately like, oh, tighten up and tense and like, have a literal visceral reaction. I don't care whether it's a coach or whatever it is. the second you think about something that you really want and you literally have that visceral reaction, it's great information that you actually want it.
Yes.
Because if I said to you, oh, I should go be a barista at Starbucks, you'd be like, okay, whatever. There's no reaction other than, what are you talking about? Just because I said I liked coffee, you know, what, this doesn't make any sense. But when you hear or say, I want to be something, and you feel that anxiety, you feel the imposter syndrome pop up, the doubt, the fear, all the cousins of imposter syndrome, good information.
Great information.
When people say to me, I'm really scared to become whatever it is that they say, a coach, an entrepreneur, a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever it is, it tells us they actually really want it.
Yeah.
So a little imposter syndrome tells you one thing. If you didn't care, you wouldn't have it.
Right. I love that.
Love it. Well, I love the spine. I love the strengths of spine. Thank you, Megan, for that. And although I heard
you'll see that pop up somewhere.
Yeah. Although I heard myself talk way too much about imposter syndrome, it is the thing that keeps natural born coaches from becoming coaches. And at the end of the day, you are who you are, and you're not fooling anyone.
I think that is a great way to end our Q&A session. And I would highly recommend, if anybody's interested in finding out more about coaching, to reach out to Amy Magyar at FromWithinCoaching.com. And great advice. Love it. Let's go kill imposter syndrome today.
Let's go do it, Megan. One client at a time.
Awesome.
Cheers to that. Cheers.
Thanks.